Thanks for your time. Good to speak to you as always. Obviously, it's been quite a quick turnaround. Saw you last night, so just tell us a bit about sort of what the programme is for you going into Blackburn and the players now.
Yeah, straight in this morning, watched the game back, and then moved straight into Blackburn. Had the lads in, so they've been in today working as well. So busy day, and then everything gets ready to prep and make sure that we're ready to go on Saturday.
What were your reflections when you watched back that Southampton game? Similar feelings to last night?
Yeah, I think two lenses, right? I think you get the emotional lens of coming away with nothing and how we finished the game for the last 15-20. I also think then, when you step back and kind of analyse where the group at and understand, where we're at in our journey. I think in terms of watching the first half, I thought there was some really good stuff again. I thought in terms of their keeper being a lot busier than ours, and that's it. That's us a little bit at the minute. When we get those periods where we're on top, we don't ease that pressure by taking a chance, which naturally heightens a bit of maybe a bit of anxiety, a bit of tension. I think we have to be braver in those moments and have to be. I spoke about it last night, but a little bit tougher, a bit more ruthless, and it will come. I think we played against an extremely strong team last night and caused them some real problems for the first half. So. And then naturally, I think when you look at the second half of the changes with where people are at physically, returning from injuries or building match minutes, and the second half for me wasn't where it needed to be, which we're quite clear on. But it's one of those. I think, like I said, there's still elements for us to take, to learn from and to be better at.
Obviously, you've spoken quite a lot about the fact that it has been sort of poor concessions over the last few games and things like that. Is that almost more frustrating as a coach sometimes? Because I'm sure you back yourself to sort out sort of tactical problems and things like that, but when it's individual errors, is that sometimes more difficult to solve?
It's probably frustrating, I think, because it's in our control and we could be sat here with a lot more points on the board and the validation of the work that we're doing. But I think in terms of what does it do? We have to develop some resilience, which if you want to be a successful team becomes quite important. And for me, you do that by having challenging periods. So I think it's one of those. It's like I said. I look at the Millwall game. I look at Middlesbrough. We could have easily got a point, if not more, from those games. We didn't, and that's the nature of Championship football. The margins are so fine, and we're at the stage of building something which I think we have to do quickly. And a lot of work goes on behind the scenes with players collectively, individually, to analyse the things that aren't the mistakes, the areas that we need to get better at, and that's the bit. I think like I said, if I was sat here with the run of results we've had, saying we've been absolutely dominated for whole games and miles behind the opposition, I'd be a bit more worried. But the fact that we've shown some really good progress in areas, we've shown some good moments. We now have to make sure that we cut out the volume of errors to and it will turn. I know it will.
I think looking back at your records at Bristol City and at Oxford, you kind of started, or last season at Bristol City, you kind of started quite slowly and then obviously went on to be quite successful. So is that helping you stay calm a little bit, the fact that you've kind of been here before?
Probably at most clubs, right? I think it's one of those. I talk about it. I think if we want players that are able to make decisions and be unpredictable, we have to allow them to do that. And a part of that, and that will be new for some of the lads. I think they're unfortunately some are programmed to do certain things, and we're trying to change elements of that, which it doesn't happen overnight. Still finding out a lot about the lads in terms of how do they cope under pressure. What does that look like? And there's so much going on. So again, I think it's one of those. Like, I've been doing it a little while now. I've done a few games and been in similar positions before. And like I said, I know what turns it, which is staying calm, being quite clear and analytical and reflective on where we're at. Doesn't mean we accept it. Doesn't mean that we're happy with it. But I think it's understanding. Part of the process that you have to go through to be successful is to have periods like this. And like I said, what the lads have to do is stay focused, stay working hard, stay being brave, stay doing us and working to our identity.
I think a lot of the players have spoken sort of over the last few weeks about how positive the mood is in the camp. Is that something that's harder to maintain in this sort of circumstance, or do you almost have to prepare for that before you lose a couple of games and have to insulate for that?
Yeah, the same as when you win a couple, right? I think I spoke after that week around it's such a marathon of a season. We've got 43 games to go, and that's why I think when you step back and you look at it, I think if we're making assessments and judgments on a brand new team with a brand new staff after 3 league games, I think we're a little bit crazy. So I think for me there's elements where it is that, and that's the key bit for the lads as well. I think the skill of being, especially in the Football League, I think, and that would be different for some of the lads coming over here. The Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday nature of it, you have to stay so in control of your emotions. You can't, like I say, think you've cracked it when you win a game, the same as the world hasn't ended when you've lost. I think, of course, you have to have that initial emotional reaction in the 24 hours after the game, but I think you then can't carry that forward for too long, because you have to move on quickly, and you see it every season, right? The last 10-15 games, a team comes flying out of nowhere and has a real push, and I think it's for me that it's building the foundations and the blocks that are going to enable us to be successful come the end of the season.
Yeah, and in terms of being able to move on from losses quite quickly, is that an advantage going into this weekend, the fact you've got that tight turnaround?
Yeah, definitely. We should be desperate to get out there and play and build on some of the bits and try and correct some of the things that aren't right. And that's what we're doing at the moment. We're using experiences. We're taking them on board, and I think for future references they're really valuable. I think in life as well as on the football pitch. I think any experience you have only allows you to grow and develop and be better. And they're bits that we'll definitely use. And going away to Blackburn, which we know is a tough game, as you've seen in pretty much most of the Championship games this season. I watched one today, which is, there's absolutely nothing in it. One team wins, one team loses, and that's the margins at this level. You can play fantastically well and still lose. So I think it's one of those where we have to, like I said, we'll be prepared, we'll be planned, we'll have done the work correctly. The lads will be mentally in a good spot, and we have to, relish the opportunity to go and win on Saturday.
Yeah, I know you'll be desperate to get a win in front of your own fans as quickly as possible, but going away from home, is it quite positive that you've got those positive associations from Portsmouth and Watford so far?
Yeah, and they're all different experiences, right? I think we will use them, but again, it's a different challenge there, different group, different different style, different things about them. So, of course, we'll use that, but it's turning up and being present. I think it's choosing what you carry forward from the past, what learning you take, and probably not putting too much energy on beyond Saturday. Everything, the most important bit is turning up and being present Saturday and doing what we need to.
I know you'll always say that you have to be good at everything, but I want to press you a little bit on Blackburn and sort of what you're expecting from them.
Tough game. Standard answer every week when you ask me. Tough game. Similar, right? Mixed results at the start. Obviously, winning their last game. Difficult place to go. I think any game on the road in the Championship's tough. I think you only have to look at the. You would never ever want to predict the results in the Championship over the course of a weekend, which shows how difficult they are. And we mustn't ever underestimate how difficult it is to win a game at this level. So they'll be well organised. They'll be well set up. And it's one of those. We know we have to be at our best to try and win.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about Todd Cantwell. Obviously, their new captain, someone Norwich fans will know well, someone I'm sure you've faced a couple of times as well. Feels like he's in quite a good patch. So is he the sort of player who maybe you need to prepare specifically for, or would you prefer to just focus on what you're doing?
I think you have to have a level of awareness of everybody in their team, not just Todd. I think in terms of we'll do our homework. We'll give the lads as much as they need, I think, but ultimately it does always come back to us, and I think you've seen that in recent games. It's more on us, it's more on what we do, and that'll be very much the same message. We have to be hard to beat. We have to do that with and without the ball, which is the big challenge at the moment, and again I think it's one that we should relish.
I have to ask you about the formation, because that's sort of what fans are talking about. Do you feel like it's too early in the season to change? Is it mainly in your head about improving things rather than sort of go into a different solution straight away after a couple of losses?
I don't really know what the issue is with the formation, to be honest. I think when you look at even like first half last night, we had really good control at times and got in behind them well, and like I said, I thought we had the better chances. I think you look at Middlesbrough, exactly the same first half. For 35-40 minutes we dominated, and again, probably bar the 2 goals we gave them, had the better chances. Same as Millwall for 30 minutes, really, really good control with it. And then the next bit is how do you turn that good control? And like I said earlier, I think it's, I'm sure there's a different feeling if we take one of the chances last night and we come in at half-time ahead, the same as on Saturday if we come in and we've taken one of the chances and not given them 2 goals. I'm sure people aren't talking about the formations, and that's ultimately isn't the reason that what's costing us in the last couple of games. It's more the simple things in the game, doing the basic things well enough, and that toughness I spoke about last night. That how do you manage certain situations? How do you make sure when you're on top that you continue to stay on top and you don't shift the momentum in their favour with a cheap turnover or a poor duel? The same as when you're creating, you have to be ruthless and clinical, and that for me just then will ease elements in the lads' heads. I think that's the biggest bit.
Yeah, I've got to ask you about transfers as well. Obviously, George Long's move to Southampton has gone through now. Is that the kind of one where, almost a bit like Brad Hill's, you've just got too many players and you've kind of got to trim that squad a little bit? Yeah,
and where George is out, obviously wants to compete to play, and that wasn't the case here. So one of those where slightly heavier on numbers, and I think it just made sense on both sides.
I think one of those we'd probably put in that bracket is Anis Ben Slimane, but obviously played a few minutes last night. So does that show that even when somebody is on the fringes and maybe there is a bit of a question mark over their future, it's not said and done until they've moved on and they can play a part?
I think it's been quite transparent with the players on the situation, and done that with a few of those. I think in terms of what it looks like going forward, of playing opportunities, and I think that's the most important bit, that we're upfront and honest. And again, I think what that then looks like. They're obviously contracted, so for me, we look after them correctly. If they work hard, they train properly. You'd never rule anybody out, but I think it's also, like I said, being quite transparent. If players are quite clear that minutes and opportunities are going to be difficult to come by, naturally they'll tend to look for other opportunities, and obviously we'll support that as well.
In terms of sort of other transfers and things, it feels like you've said it's quite quiet for maybe a couple of weeks now. Is that still sort of the case?
Transfer window, right? You never know what happens. It's such a fluid, evolving time of the year that anything can happen, right?
Just a couple of players I wanted to ask about individually. One of them's Liam Gibbs, who obviously started yesterday. I thought quite a decent performance, and probably someone who people aren't looking at as much as maybe Kenny or Mirko, in that midfield, or Nacho. But is he somebody you feel can really contribute to you this season?
Yeah, I think he's obviously had a tough time. I've known him a long time, to be fair. I worked with him when he was extremely young. I think he's obviously had a tough time with injuries, and hence I think last night is a really good step forward for him. And the fact that he's completed and done a large amount of pre-season is big progress for him. And especially when you miss that period building up that load, and just the tolerance to be able to train consecutive days is a big plus. And I agree with you. I thought he did some good bits last night. I thought he neat and tidy. I thought he obviously you could see him tire a bit towards the end, but again, I think in terms of as a footballer, I thought he showed some really good attributes last night.
Do you think it will help him to have actually played in that position? Because it feels like he's been a bit of a polyfiller over the last couple of years, filling in a lot of positions. So is it also valuable because he got minutes in that central midfield role?
Yeah, and for him and for us, right, to see him there, I think that's the key bit as well. And I think when you look at him, probably a strength and a weakness in the outcome for him is that he's a very good footballer. He's a really good all-round footballer, which then makes it sometimes easier to move people like that around and play them in numerous slots. So I think he's probably been a victim of that. Previous players in the past, I know you can tend to use them in different ways without sometimes cementing down an area, but I think that will be a strength as well, which I think the squad needs, someone that can do that. I think and he's shown that, I think, in numerous times in his career, but also, like I said last night, I thought he had a solid performance.
Yeah, I also wanted to ask about Mirko. I obviously mentioned him earlier, and I think he started all of your games so far this season. So what does that say about how important you see him being to your team?
Yeah, I've been really impressed by him. I think he's exactly what we needed. I think, you see him last night, the way he intercepts, the way he breaks up play. I think his capacity to break play up and drive forward with it. I think he shows some real strength doing that. He should score. I think obviously hit the bar last night, had a really close opportunity at the weekend as well. I think he's someone that will contribute. And he'll only improve, I think, seeing him, how he carries himself, he'll only improve over time. I think the more he gets settled in the league and understands what the sheer intensity and the margins in Championship football and how close they are, that and the volume of games and the programme, there'll all be new things for not just him, but I'm really confident that he'll pick that up quickly, and I think he's already shown huge progress in his time with us. I
think Harry's the only other one who started all of the games. So does that show that you quite like a sort of consistent spine through the middle of your team?
Elements to that, I think elements of that, other bits behind the scenes, elements of fatigue and knocks. I think sometimes you make so many factors that go into picking a team. It's not it's not throw a load of magnets up and see who lands. I think it's as nice it would be to do it that way. I think there's a huge amount of work that goes into it. Biggest challenge in my job, bit that keeps me awake most at night, is obviously team selection. So I think we have to find the right blend of consistency, continuity, leadership, and also supporting. I think I'm sure it helped Liam last night playing with Mirko for a period of time as well. So I think those elements are important as well.
And just to end on fitness, obviously Matthias came off at half time yesterday. So have you had a chance to sort of assess him again? Still not particularly worried about him?
Yeah, no, not particularly worried. I got a meeting this afternoon, so we'll find out more for definite. The lads have been in working this morning, so on recovery. So yeah, no concerns on that one, but yeah, I'll be clearer this afternoon.
And you also said that maybe Mate's role going forward would depend on how he responded to those 60 minutes yesterday. So physically, how's he looking after that?
Yeah, another one in this morning. I was pleased with Mate last night. I think I've thrown a challenge at him, and I think in the last 2-3 weeks in training, he's really stepped up. I think you saw attributes last night which I really enjoyed. His risk taking, his bravery to try and create things. The personality he showed, I thought was very good. So it's now about sustaining that, I think. And again, another one obviously missed a large period of time, and the more he gets up to speed conditionally, he'll only improve as well.
Is Jack Stacey still sort of going through the concussion protocol?
Yeah, I saw Jack yesterday. He was in yesterday. Still got symptoms and still finds certain bits. He's okay for a period, then he does a bit and has to sit down for a while. So he's still got symptoms, but yeah, he's like I say, he's getting the best care possible.
So will he be unavailable?
Yeah, unavailable.
Yeah. Anybody else you're expecting to come back before the international break? I'm thinking sort of Lucian, Elliot Miles, a couple of others. No. I think that's it. Unless you're going to tell me there's any fresh injuries that we don't know about.
Don't think so. No, I don't think so. No, all good.
Cheers.